Hey, everybody. Coming up, have you ever been mad at a local business? You know, usually it just takes one bad employee to make your customer experience miserable, right? And it could just take one bad executive to make life miserable for thousands of employees. So in turn, couldn't one good executive or employee with a good business character make life so much better? That's what we're talking about coming up next on The Matt Townsend Show. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Matt Townsend Show. I am your host, Matt Townsend, your relationship coach, your guide on the side, doing what we can on the show every single day, Monday through Friday, to help you and your loved ones grow healthy, happy lives, healthy, happy relationships, and of course, really just trying to get you through this thing we call life, where there is no handbook, right, for humanity. That's what we try to be on the show, is your handbook for humanity. Welcome to the show, everybody. And today I want to really take on, I think, a pretty important conversation. It seems like, and I don't know, maybe it's just the economy. Maybe it's just that financial markets are struggling. Maybe it's Greece. Hey, let's blame Greece. Everyone else is. Maybe it's Spain. I don't know what it is, but there's a lot going on, and it seems like businesses are under some serious stress. And it also seems like our bosses, our managers, a lot of people aren't playing the game as effectively as they used to. So on today's show, we're going to be talking about maybe bringing back some character to our work environment, bringing back a little more integrity, a little less corruption, maybe, a little more sincerity, a little more, of just some of those old-fashioned values back into the workplace. Again, I really feel strongly that as we try to live in this crazy thing we call life, at some point when we're spending so much time away from our family and so much time at work, it would sure be great if we could go to a place and be with people that seem to really have character and have integrity. And instead, a lot of times in the business world, it's starting to slip. Now, for example, just think back to the 90s, right? Now, a time when America's economy seemed bulletproof, stocks went up, houses always increased in value, and the problems just sort of took care of themselves, right? Until then, apparently, they didn't.
The other day, somebody reminded me of a book I saw 10 years ago. It was called Why It's Different This Time, The Dow at 30,000 by 2008. It only gets 1 star on Amazon, but copies are selling for over $50 a piece, probably for its novelty factor, not for its accurate stock predictions. There are many complicated reasons why the Dow Jones is now equal to where it was about a decade ago. But as the economic windstorm of the past few years has blown over many businesses in the forest of companies, it's allowed us a glimpse into the dry rot which has brought down a few titans of industry, like a certain Texas-based energy company. You know the one. It was a shining star back in the 90s as it merged with the natural gas pipeline and electricity producers and other things. And under deregulation, it really was looking like it was starting to flourish. Its stock price grew 300%. Everything seemed great until the power went out. Rolling blackouts spread across the Golden State, really for no good reason. Years later, we learned of these terms like Fat Boy, Ping Pong, Death Star. Turns out they were all code names energy traders would use as they were manipulating the market as they overbooked a main transmission line through Central California so they could raise prices. That sort of culture probably resulted from the company's executive compensation system. It was intended to reward valuable employees, but it backfired and encouraged them to just look at short-term profitability to maximize their own bonuses. Then the company, which Forbes called America's most innovative company for 6 years in a row, began to crack. Turns out they'd brought in an accountant to use some innovative accounting strategies to help hide their liabilities from shareholders.
I'm a super genius!
Liquidity problems popped up too. Its credit rating dropped down to a triple B+, which is basically junk status.
Oh, come on!
And the SEC started to investigate. Many of the bad guys at Enron, if you haven't guessed the name by now, And Arthur Andersen, its accounting firm, wound up in jail.
Oh, man!
And that's where the storybook version ends. But you know the rest of the story. Enron stock went down to zero. Its employees lost a big chunk of their retirement, and all 22,000 workers lost their jobs. Arthur Andersen, a firm which grew from humble beginnings over 90 years to become one of America's big five accountants, was effectively destroyed. 85,000 employees lost their jobs. Many of their CPAs were forced to surrender their licenses. The stock market took a dip across the board, and while the power came back on in California, the extra money families had paid in price gouging was long gone. Now, we've seen more trouble in the past few years. WorldCom, Tyco, Bear Stearns, AIG, and Ponzi schemes. I always thought it was kind of ironic that the guy who made off with a ton of investors' money was named Bernie Madoff. Today we know more than ever how unethical decisions on Wall Street can affect us on Main Street in a very real way. So if a stranger clear across the country can negatively affect us with their bad decisions, how do we affect the people close to us when we make bad decisions?
Good stuff. Isn't that, I mean, all those stories bring back such negative memories. Thanks, Rob. It really is interesting because when you think of all of these organizations, the Enron, you just think of Bernie Madoff, all of these areas, and plus, the collapse of the financial markets, all of these organizations that were involved in, kind of messing up our own markets as well as the international markets. Every one of these organizations were led by people. And it's interesting now that they start bringing people before Congress, and now we're going to start doing investigations as they've been doing with all of these scandals. It's always the people they're bringing before. So it's the people in the end that either have to possess the character or not. Now, I've spent a lot of time, and I'm just wrapping up finally this doctorate in human and organizational development. Studied a lot of what's called human behavior and organizational behavior. And the reality that I'm now learning, which I didn't learn before, sadly, is that people or organizations don't behave. People do. If there's a lack of character in an organization, it's in the person. Now, the person may create systems that don't work or that are corrupt, but it's people. It's all of us. There's a great quote that I love that says, "The systems always reflect their creator." So we tend to create systems if we're corrupt that tend to be corrupting. We tend to create family organizations or family structures or even gossiping about our children or how we deal with things based on our character. So what we're going to be doing on the show for the entire hour is we're going to be talking to an expert. His name is Bill Bennet, a past executive of at Franklin Covey, a leadership company, and we're going to be picking his brain about how you get character back into business and how you bring character back into the lives of people. He's an author. We'll talk all about it after this break. Stay tuned with us right here on the Matt Townsend Show on Sirius XM 143 BYU Radio. Welcome back, everybody, to the Matt Townsend Show. Appreciate you joining us today. We're talking about character and how we bring character ethic back into our work lives, our business lives. I know a lot of you out there are executives probably driving home right now back on the East Coast after, actually probably not, you're probably just going to get a latte, and then you're going to end up going and working 3 more hours and then going home. But we're trying to figure out how we get more character, more, just work. What's the word? Character ethic, kind of a sense of what matters most back into our businesses, kind of take back our work environment from the corruption, from just the negativity that might be overtaking it. And to really get it started, I thought what goes better with business than the concept of golf. So we sent one of our producers out, Corinne Collins, to kind of give us some information. We all know that there's negative character traits of some businessmen, right? And there are good people as well. But here's Corinne Collins talking about the positive qualities that create good business character.
Now, If I were to ask you what the best characteristics of a good businessman were, what would you say? I'm sure some of you would probably say honesty, creativity, or financial awareness, but I'm also pretty certain that financial awareness could be code word for able to make money. And that perhaps we might be able to add good golfing skills to that list. In irony, of course. But maybe not. According to a recent article in The Economist, golfing skills are a reflection of good business characteristics. Julian Small, CEO of the Wentworth Golf Club in London, says that golf is a fine test of character because it rewards players who remain calm under pressure, think strategically, and requires a high level of honesty. Sure, you could move the ball while no one's watching, but if you get caught, you just might end up being labelled and shunned. So, at least in the business world of golfing, it pays most to be honest. And while we can add responsibility, adaptability, and a number of other character traits to a list of good business characteristics, it appears that honesty might be the number one. Because let's face it, no one wants to play games with a cheater.
So true. Nobody wants to play games with a cheater. Nobody wants to go to work with somebody that lacks character and is cheating and just doesn't quite get how to do it right with character and integrity. So what we're doing is we're going to bring on Bill Bennet. Now, Bill Bennet, you got to know, he's an author, and we're going to get into his book because his book has some incredible insight. But Bill also has some serious business background, right? So he did a lot of work and sales with IBM. He was a marketing manager, a sales manager. He was the president of Folio Software Corporation, also the president of PowerQuest Software, president of a division president for Franklin Covey, which, as you know, is kind of a leadership development kind of organization. They teach skills and leadership. And now he's an author. Now all he does is go around and educate people on, I think, a pretty interesting story. Now, you've written 2 books, though, right, Bill?
I have.
Now,
yes.
welcome to the show.
Thank you, man.
Now, tell us the 2 books.
The first was a little book called The Christmas Gift.
Yeah.
Very simple story, really sort of targeted at a family sharing the story together. And it's really about how we judge people and then how those judgments skew our ability to ever have a good relationship with people.
And you seem to like the Christmas motif because the second book, and it's weird that we're talking about Christmas books in the middle of June, but this one's different. Jacob T. Marley is the name of the second book. And if you're thinking out there, that name sounds so familiar. It should be. It has something to do with Ebenezer Scrooge. You may remember. Jacob Marley came back and rocked Ebenezer's world.
He did.
So tell us about that.
Well, you know, as you, probably most people know from Christmas Carol, which begins Marley was dead to begin with. Marley was this unscrupulous business person, as Scrooge was, his partner. He is filled with regret, and somehow, in means we don't know from Christmas Carol, he's able to come back. He's able to arrange the visits of these 3 ghosts for Scrooge. And he's got this tremendous remorse and virtually begs him to change his life before it's
seriously,
too late.
Ebenezer, listen to me.
Right.
I've died. Now, it's interesting. It doesn't seem like – I didn't remember Marley. Jacob Marley's the one that put these 3 guys together, these 3 visitors. Mm-hmm. But he did.
Yeah, he was the intermediary, or the union arbitrator, or whatever it took.
Organizer.
To make that happen. Yeah,
isn't that great? And then, but he had regret. So this is kind of why I wanted to do the show. So I'm sitting here, think of your book. How many people out there are in a business that's falling apart anyway, struggling with the economy? There's already regret. They're already being a Scrooge, and they don't get the benefit of Jacob Marley's visit.
Yeah, exactly, and. You know, in the book, the point was how come he didn't get it? How come he didn't get a chance? And the message of Christmas Carol, and the message that I think we can take to business today is, hey, it's not too late. Yeah. You know, and we can make a difference. We can take make a pivot point on character.
Yeah,
and it can make a difference immediately.
Well, that's what's neat about it is. It's not like it doesn't even like take forever to get it running. If you just get a little character, more character than you had yesterday, we're going to start creating some momentum.
Correct. And, you know, human beings as a whole are pretty remarkably forgiving people.
Yeah.
And when they see someone who's perhaps not been the model of ethics and character turn and attempt to move sincerely in the right direction, in most cases, it's remarkable how willing people are to embrace that.
Yeah, we'll let it go. We're forgiving people. Just don't quit messing my life up, basically. Right. And so as people are sitting out there driving in their car, some of them, just be asking yourself this. What's it like to be your employee? What's it like to have you as the boss? Oh, it's such a relief. I'm such a great guy. I have the best parties every Christmas. No, what is it really like to have to deal with you? And we're going to get into some of the things. What were some of the lessons that you write about in your book? What was it you had to kind of, stretch because you didn't have some of the data of exactly what Jacob Marley was thinking. Right. So what did you're a business exec and you've been in at the highest levels and you know the pressure. We got to produce, we got to get results. We got to get them sometimes at the expense of even our people is what people think. What have you seen, and what did you bring out in the Jacob Marley book?
Well, I think what you would find coming out is a lesson that I felt I learned in my years of working, which is the supreme lesson, which is that people matter.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this, Matt, in the opening of the show. A business is nothing but people.
That's right.
Every aspect of it, every level of performance, every problem, it's all about the people. And any leader that thinks that somehow the people are an ancillary aspect of their business is going to create a miserable work environment.
That's right. Well, in fact, it's interesting. Even in the presidential election, you're seeing this come up. You're seeing people nitpick Bain. You're seeing them nitpick Solyndra. All these business decisions, cabinet members. These are all people. These aren't just political positions. All of these are just humans behaving, and a human group of humans behaving creates kind of organizational behaving.
Right.
And so when I'm mad at a restaurant, I'm not mad at Dave Thomas who owns Wendy's. I'm mad at whoever's behind the counter that just shortchanged me.
Right. And I think that one of the things that's key for us to understand too, and this applies to personal relationships as well as business, is that we are wired to respond better in a high trust, high ethics environment.
Yeah.
We bring our best to the party. When we're in an environment of fear and trepidation, we don't. We've got that old part of our brain, the fight
or flight, that's right,
kicking in, and fighting or flighting, if you'd say it, aren't generally the solutions to any of our problems.
They're not. What do you see, Bill, when you see, like, if you're going to define character, how do you define it as a businessman who has to get results and as somebody who needs to do it with people? What does character look like in business?
Well, we've had that discussion many times over the years in our team meetings, and what I always came back to is very simply, it's the right thing. It's doing the right thing, and it is not the right thing for the bottom line, although oftentimes it helps the bottom line, but oftentimes character does not. Character sometimes has a negative impact to the bottom line.
Yeah.
But for somebody who's driven and committed to a high-value life, it doesn't matter. Character is what is the right thing, and so many log jams have been broken when we've sat in a meeting and somebody said, wait a minute, just what is the right thing to do?
That's such a great question.
And most of us intuitively go right to the answer.
Isn't that interesting? Because it's sometimes it's not what we're thinking. It's and so many times, this is antithetical. It's the opposite of what you think you would need to do. If you need to get the bottom line, you need to make the money, except without your people. Or sometimes it just takes you a little more time to do it with character, but it allows you to go a lot longer term.
Sure. I just had a wonderful experience. I just came back from a trip to New York, and just with a rental car company where there was a policy that's probably a very sensible policy, but was causing a wrong thing to happen with regard to my rental. And I had this wonderful agent when I returned the car who first told me the way it was going to be, and then he stopped and he said, you know what, that just isn't right. Just give me a second. And I waited for about 30 seconds, and he came back and he said, we took care of it. And they own me.
Yeah, you're going there every time.
I trust this organization, and probably more so than they maybe earned in that one moment.
That's right.
But again, it's an example of how willing we are to get behind somebody who tries to earn our trust.
Well, and then how quickly we are willing to just get rid of someone that doesn't.
Right.
And those things stay, don't they? These bad moments, everyone out there that's listening, they've had a bad moment. And they've had a bad moment with a company, and they will never go back to that company ever again.
Right. Well, you think about the number of very public, and unfortunately we have so many of them, very public examples of problems, and how incensed we are when we see somebody on the stand who shows no remorse.
That's right.
And when we hear that remorse, we maybe still hate the situation, but we're willing to forgive. But when we sense no remorse, that's when we just say, never, never again do I trust that individual or that organization.
And the customer service idea, I mean, it just oozes down, doesn't it? You can just see what the culture is just by watching how they're empowered or they're not, who has the power to make decisions. I mean, the idea that we have this huge advantage technologically, but we have people that still can't make decisions. So, I mean, where you should be able to get a hold of anybody in a minute, we still have people that can't, and they're not even empowered to make some of the decisions like your car person did.
Right. You know, it was interesting because with the car person, I said, wow, I didn't realize you had a policy that would allow you to make a decision like that. And his answer was, I don't know that we do. And
honestly, that might be the best policy.
Yeah. And so, yes, you're right. That has a huge trickle-down effect.
Yeah.
And you can calling a customer service line is one of the best windows, transparent windows, to get a view into the leadership of an organization.
Yeah, what exactly are they saying?
Right.
What aren't they saying?
Right.
Well, I mean, you think of all of these companies, and Nordstrom's, for example, has gotten such great feedback, but they'll just take whatever you want back. We'll take it back. My sister worked there, and they would bring stuff back that they know never came from this company. That was never sold at Nordstrom's, and they'll take it back.
Right.
And it seems absurd until you're shopping at Nordstrom's. Then all of a sudden, it's the safety. It's just we trust each other.
Well, you know, you see the same thing at an organization like a Costco.
Yeah.
You know, I often tell people I would have gotten our children at Costco if they sold them.
Oh, totally.
And,
you'd have to get three.
Yeah.
3 for one.
But it's not only reflected in that customer experience, it's reflected in the fact that when I go to my local Costco, I see people who've worked there 5, 7, 10 years.
Yeah.
And because and you ask them if they like their job, and to a person they will say, "This is a great place to work." They trust me. They have an environment that's uplifting.
Yeah. See, you just can't get around it. And character, is it something we teach, or is it just something we're born with?
Well,
or both.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly something we can learn, but it's something that we don't live until we embrace.
That's right.
And I think in terms of taking it to others, we do teach it. But as you know, the harmony between actions and words is critical.
Oh, it's huge. And I remember when I worked at Franklin Covey, one of our clients then was Ritz-Carlton, who had a mission statement that was it was the character mission. It's basically, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And then they instill that in the heads and the minds of everybody. And there's so many stories of people getting off ladders to run across the courtyard to help somebody in with their luggage, and that person was a janitor, wasn't even the bellman, and people just backing each other up and doing it. Character is there. I even think it's instilled in our heart. It's inherent, which is maybe why Jacob Marley was coming back. It's in there. Right. And when once you move on to the other side, you realize that maybe that's the most important thing.
Right.
Well, we're going to come back with Bill Bennet, and we're going to talk in depth about some tools, some ideas, lessons from Jacob Marley, as well as just what are some rules, what are some things that all of us need to do to have a little more character at our work, at our jobs, in our lives. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back after this break on The Matt Townsend Show on Sirius XM 143 BYU Radio. Welcome back, everybody, to the Matt Townsend Show. We're joined by Bill Bennet, who's an author, a speaker, an executive that has, dealt with the highest levels of business, and we're picking his brain. He wrote a book called Jacob Marley. It's a blast from the past. Ebenezer Scrooge's old partner who came back in the dreams. Remember, he brought the ghosts of Christmas past and present and future. And Jacob Marley wanted to teach Ebenezer, you know what? I had regrets. No need that you don't need regrets. We can change it still. And Bill Bennet put together some really interesting ideas, but it's really based on character, isn't it, Bill?
It is.
And let's talk about that. Like, when you think of the lessons, what lessons did Jacob bring?
Well, I think that the first thing that really turned him is to understand that it's not all about him.
Yeah.
And that when we lose ourselves in the pursuit of supporting other people and in helping to better other people's lives is when we find ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
And that kind of became the flux point for him in the story. And of course, this is I did this obviously without Dickens' permission since he's been dead a little while. But
you didn't call.
so I had to fill in the gaps as I saw them.
Yeah.
But I also tried to pay attention to Dickens' letters to get what was in his head. And I think that this is true to the original intent, which is, the wake-up call of, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Yeah.
And how do I fix it?
And how do you fix it? And you can fix it. That's another, I guess, message. So one message is simply it's about the people. People matter.
Right.
And another message is it's never too late.
Right.
And so, is it? It's interesting just talking to you because it would be easy for you to just go get another business job. A business gig, running a business, running a division, running a company. And yet, what I love about you is this passion you have now for just people. I guess you had it then. You did, but it's just different. It seems like you're a lighter guy.
Well, in some regards, maybe,
Yeah.
but I think, and I hope I learned during the course of my business years, and that I hope people got the benefit of it, that they just do matter, and that the best things that ever happened to us in any of our organizations were when when we focused as a leadership team on our people, and we let the people focus on the customer. And if we took care of them, they would take care of
handed
the
down,
customer.
isn't
We
it?
want them to feel we had their back.
Yeah.
And they mattered to us, and their success mattered. And that means doesn't mean you let all problems exist. You deal with issues, but you still, in the end, you care about them as a human being.
Well, and maybe that's really all that it is. Isn't that really why businesses exist? It's about serving people. It's ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. It's not about corporate enterprise and financiers serving. It's all about business, and business seems all about the relationship.
It is. And and of course, capitalism is the driver that makes these things exist. And you don't have to make an either or decision.
No, you don't.
And we've got these wonderful examples in the business world that embraced high ethics, high value character while building tremendous businesses.
That's right. Well, and in fact, it seems like you were saying earlier, it would insure it. The way you insure your future is ensure the character is in the business,
right?
And the people.
And I think one of the things I observed over the years, in the role that I was in, I met with many customers, perhaps thousands over the years, and that most organizations could drive themselves to a peak for a short period of time through fear and intimidation and shortcutting. But the organizations that were resilient and that were able to make it through all kinds of challenges were the ones in which the value base began with the leader, where people knew that they cared and they worked through things together.
And it's kind of and the water got all the way to the end of the row.
Right.
You know what I mean? It seems like so many. That's maybe why a lot of these family businesses seem to struggle. It maybe goes a generation or two, but sometimes it doesn't get all the way down. Or some of these bigger organizations, which is probably what a lot of our listeners are in big companies. They're in huge organizations. So what would you tell to the average Joe? It's not the president of a company, but is just an employee about where their character comes from. They're not going to go, institutionalize character. Where do they begin?
Well, I think that the first place is, and it's surprising, a number of people don't do this. What are my values? What do I stand for? What are the things that when people come to know me, they associate me with that value concept?
Right.
And I've been surprised over the years that the number of people that don't think about that.
No.
And that will perhaps wholesale adopt their organizational value system and say, wait a minute, far more important than that is who are you?
Who are you?
And what do you stand for?
Yeah.
And I think that's where you have to begin.
Yeah. And what do you bring to the table? You bring your values. What are your gifts? What do you bring?
Right. And I think when you have that, I have found over the years that organizations that I've worked for are surprisingly flexible to work with me around my value system if I see a problem, because they have such a high respect for somebody that knows who they are and where they're going. Not that I've always done a good job of that, but I've had a lot of failures that have helped me learn.
Oh, sure.
And I think that, when I did a lot of hiring, and when I hire somebody, interview somebody on a college campus that maybe doesn't know what they want to do with their business life, but they know exactly who they are, my first impression is, you know what, this person's a good bet.
That's right. Well, and because you can then take that knowledge, that self-awareness, and turn it. I mean, I can train you on the skills, but you knowing who you are, wow.
Yeah. And I think, another thing that I learned is that absolutely nothing makes up for a failure in ethics.
That's right.
I mean, it's so foundational that you cannot, maybe you were talking in the intro about Enron and some of these other organizations. Success tends to hide a lot of sins.
Oh, yeah.
And so when in great periods of success, we might overlook that. But in the long run, when there's an ethical failure, there is nothing you can do that will overcome that. So you might as well deal with it and get it right.
In fact, it's interesting. It seems like we hire not necessarily looking at the ethics. And maybe that's harder to just go find out for real. But we tend to fire for a lack of ethics.
Right.
So we tend to hire for just, I guess, skills, capability. Do you possess the right resume? Did you go to the right schools? But boy, it seems like it's the ethics and the character that seem to create the durability of the employee.
Exactly.
It's huge. What else? What other advice do you give to just the average Joe that's sitting there like they're dealing with a boss that lacks character? Maybe they're in an organization that they're not really aligned to, but they can't leave. I got to pay my bills. What would you say? What would you suggest to them to bring character out?
Well, I would say, first of all, that kind of point 1A is you do not compromise your ethics and your values. But point 1B is be careful that what you might call an ethical position you hold is maybe just an opinion about something. And sometimes people will get very attached to something that really isn't about right and wrong. It's really about their opinion.
Yeah, it's position.
And be open-minded enough to say, well, maybe there's another way to go about it. But at the same time, understand there are lines that I don't cross.
Right.
And don't go there. And I would say a second thing to that person, as much as people will say, I cannot afford to lose this job, is don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
I think more often than not that the stories I've heard are that that person will be receptive if dealt with respectively, in a private setting, not in the middle of a meeting, standing up and saying, "You liar," but pulling him aside and saying, "Look, I have a concern. Can you just help me with this?"
Yeah.
And if somebody says, "Well, that's not my work environment," I'd say, "Look, lofe is short. Then look for a place where you're going to feel like you're reinforcing the kind of person you want to be instead of battling."
Just
with
ask Jacob Marley.
Right.
Life is not short.
Yeah, right.
I mean, life is too short. He about lost it. I think that's great advice and know that you can move on. I mean, the minute you think you can't, you're stuck there.
Well, and I think another piece too, Matt, is never underestimate the incredible impact of a single act of character.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
For every Enron, there are 10,000 or 100,000 small acts of lack of character, and just as many, if not more, of positive character
that sustain it. Exactly.
Yeah. And I got to see countless times people with what might be considered the lowest level job in an organization make an incredibly character-driven decision, and watch that have a resounding effect on the people around them.
And you're the executive, and so some just worker brings you or acts with character in a way, and it influences you.
Yeah, and sometimes it was directly with me, so I got to see it, but sometimes it's just watching them with somebody else. Yeah. And it's not done in order to showcase.
It's not.
It's done because it's the right thing to do. Right. And it there was a study done that said that when students, it was actually done at a Utah university, I don't know where it was, but when students were exposed to stories of high character decisions, they tended to make more high character decisions. Yeah. And in
fact, it was about one. I've heard a study like that when the people had just read the Bible,
right?
They were more inclined to do good things than when they hadn't just read the Bible, which is interesting.
Right, and so I think it's important to never underestimate the impact you have by doing the right thing, even though that's not the reason you do it. You do it because it's the right thing. And for somebody in a leadership role to observe and grasp on those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the fact that believe in that one, believe that you just do it for you because it's right.
Right.
If everyone else jumps on, I guess that's great. If not, at least you're in character.
Yeah.
And then having that can promote other people being in character.
I had a great piece of advice from a business person when I was only probably my first year of working, which I have embraced all these years. And he said, if you were to run into one of your work associates or a customer in the mall on Saturday with your family, would you run and hide behind the column? Or would you run up and say, hey, this is my wife and children. I'd like to introduce you.
Isn't that interesting?
And, I've thought about that. And I've made mistakes in my career that, I don't think blatant lack of integrity type things, but the mistakes I made, poor judgment. And it's always a correcting influence to think about that.
That's huge. I actually think about that with my couples or the clients I work with, because if I see them at the mall, I'm like, oh, do I want them talking to my wife? Yeah. I don't want them knowing we have problems. That's great. That's great advice. What else? What else do you think Jacob Marley would say to the world today?
Well, I think one, like I said, that to lose yourself in the pursuit of others, as we've already said, and it comes out in the book as well, that nothing makes up for a void in ethics, and I think that as common and as trite as some people might find it, literally love your fellow man.
Yeah.
I mean, we are all in this journey. We're all trying to do something good in the long run. We're failing in some cases, and am I here to point it out? To say, oh, Matt, I saw you arguing with your wife on the mall on Saturday, so, definitely I wouldn't go to your marriage course.
Right.
Or are we here to say, hey, what can I do? What can I do to give you a hand up?
Well, wouldn't it be great if we were all reaching the hand out?
Yeah.
Right now there's a lot of people that need it, don't they? They need the lift. It's huge. Jacob Marley, I guess luckily he's gone just for his sake, but it's interesting. And then just think of, I think it's a neat, of all the people you could have chosen, you didn't choose the one we've all heard about forever. Yeah. You chose the one that
the reason I chose him is because even as a little child, watching the old black and white 1951 Alistair Sims version of Christmas Carol, I can remember sitting there with my father and saying, but what happened to him? I mean, he helped Scrooge and then he's gone. Doesn't he get any points for that?
Yeah.
Or doesn't, and the idea of the story is, what's the story behind the story? Yeah. How did he get there? Yeah. And what happened as a result? And, that remorse can be a driver as opposed to just, if we don't act on it, it can just be there forever, but can be a driver to positive behavior.
That's huge. And as the listeners are out there, it's probably, what would your challenge be to them? So as they're sitting here listening to this, they now get this opportunity on their way home to kind of get a taste of it, get a taste of character. What would you challenge them to go do?
Well, I think you asked a great question, actually, a few minutes ago. What's it like to work for me?
Yeah.
There's one set of surveys I read that said about 84% of managers believe they're great to work for.
Yeah.
And of that same group of people, about 30% of the people who work for them believe they're great to work for. So, are you a big enough person and a confident enough person to understand what, from them? What's it like to work for me? In fact, even ask that question.
That's right.
What is it like to work for me? And to listen to some suggestions and because a lot of things you may not think are unethical, because we always want to judge ourselves by intent, others by their actions. Right. But that you may cross boundaries without realizing it.
Boy, but the other interesting thing, I guess, of character is have enough character to say what needs to be said.
Right.
I mean, because I could see people asking that and everyone else like, no, you're fine. You're great. You're great. But there is character in giving feedback, too, in the right way.
There is. And as somebody in a leadership position, one of the great moments to reinforce character is when you have bad news.
Yeah.
Stand up and stand in front of a group without your notes and just say, hey, this hasn't gone so well. Let me explain why. And instead of always following up with, but it's not a problem because. Say, it's an issue. Anybody got any ideas or whatever your approach is? But people believe you if you deliver bad news when you deliver good news.
Well, especially because you right there you just did that. I mean, how many times do you just say, I'm not perfect. I've blown this a million times. There's just some executives that they don't know they've blown it.
Right.
So if you're sitting out there driving your car and you don't think you've ever blown it, oh, brother.
Right.
You are the problem.
Right.
You're the problem. Good stuff, Bill. Where can they find you? Where can they find the book, Jacob Marley? Where can they find more about you?
Well, in the old traditional where all good books are sold.
Yeah.
You'd find it online in Amazon and those sorts of places. And it's a seasonal book, so you'll see it back in the stores. rwilliambennett.com is my website. I've got the Facebook sites, and you can find it there, and
You got it.
That and the other books.
Good stuff. Bill Bennet, the book, Jacob T. Marley. Check it out. It's not just a Christmas book. That's just where you'll probably have it marketed to you. But it's just is good all around. Appreciate you being here, Bill.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, my friend. And character, get out there. What's it like to be you? We'll be back with one more segment on character, giving you the tools here on the Matt Townsend Show on Sirius XM 143 BYU Radio. Welcome back, everybody, to the Matt Townsend Show. Wrapping it up. Great interview with Bill Bennet about character in our businesses, our lives. And we just want to see if we can't elevate the game a little bit for all of us. Again, it's not to guilt you, but I really want you to think about your life, your business. If you're an executive, you know what? What's it like to work for you? If you're an employee, what's it like to work alongside you? Is it, are you one that lifts and elevates, or are you one that just seriously takes a toll on everybody around you? There are ways to be honest and healthier. There are ways to have character in whatever job you do, even a car salesman, right? Now, they seem to get the bad rep and reputation for what they do. But car salesmen, they too can be ethical. And we have a little bit of a piece here, a bit done by Tom Brinton